Nothing in humanity's long vigil of the skies had prepared them for what arrived just before dawn. At 3:17 UTC on June 18, 2125, deep within the sterile white halls of the Helios I listening post, an alert blinked on Dr. Elaine Morgan's console. The post orbited beyond Mars, its antennae arrays probing the silent darkness for the merest hint of life. Morgan, chief xenolinguist of the United Nations Space Command, had spent 2 decades training her mind to distinguish between cosmic noise and intent. Tonight, her instincts blazed. This was neither flare nor meteorite. She leaned forward. On the holoscreen, a pattern of pulses, each a perfect, impossibly regular spike, repeated every 4.7 seconds. Morgan's voice was a low hush as she called across the control room. "I'm seeing structured intervals, not natural." Technicians gathered at her side, scrambling through protocols to isolate the signal. 10 kilometers away, atop a spire of solar collectors, the station's prime director, Admiral Hiroshi Takahashi, was summoned immediately. Within the hour, Helios I had isolated the source, a vector some 20,000 light-years beyond Earth, emanating from a system marked in ancient surveys as VR-53. The raw data fed into real-time decryption loops. Morgan's matrix parsed the waveform, hunting for patterns. When the first translation emerged, she nearly dropped her stylus. SOS, SOS, please help. Across continents and orbital platforms, screens flickered to life as the distress call was broadcast to every command center on Earth. In New Tokyo, high above the neon-lit sprawl, politician astronauts gasped. In New Nairobi, on a floating research ring above Lake Victoria, faces turned pale. Global governments, once fractious and divided, now shared a single, impossible question: who was signaling and why? Inside the UN Space Command's orbital citadel, Admiral Takahashi convened an emergency council. Holographic maps floated between delegates, the warp trails of freight vessels, the catalog of known habitable exoplanets, even the trajectories of rogue asteroids. At the center pulsed a red pin, VR-53, unreachable until now. "Let us assume this is not a trick," Takahashi began, his tone measured. His eyes, steel gray and unblinking, swept the room. "We must prepare for contact. Send a formal reply. We are listening. Please identify yourself and your needs." As diplomats drafted the reply, Morgan and her team worked feverishly to decode further transmissions. After 3 hours, another message sliced through the static, a visual feed. Screens around the globe displayed a world wreathed in violet skies and lanced by 2 blazing suns. Jagged coastlines skirted sprawling seas of neon-green liquid. The image stuttered, fractured, then reassembled into a crystalline view of the planet's surface. A carrier vector of glyphs scrawled vertically along the left edge. Morgan's eyes darted between characters, and her translation overlay. "We are the Vesper. Our home, Zerkath, dies. Acid seas have turned murderous. We beg sanctuary, else we perish." Gasps rippled through the citadel. Zerkath. Someone whispered, "The Death World." Legend told of a planet so brutal that only engineered warriors, Deathworlders, could survive its poisoned oceans and sulfur storms. Rumors of those creatures fashioned for war had circulated since. First scouts mapped VR-53. Before the shock of discovery could settle, a third transmission halted the room cold. This time, it was not pleas or images, but a chilling manifesto in dead Vesper tongues, run through every known dialect and back again, producing an unintelligible drone. Then, plain in every language, Deathworlders approach Earth. The words echoed like a sentence pronounced from the void. Admiral Takahashi's jaw clenched. "How many?" "Unknown," Morgan answered, her voice tight. "But if they're breaking free, we could be facing an invasion force unlike anything we've trained for." In bunkers below, Earth's defense fleet scrambled. Plasma relays hummed to life. Missile batteries glowered like watchful eyes. On orbital platforms, scientists loaded Vesparian xenodata into neural simulators, searching for patterns in Deathworlder physiology. The urgency was palpable. An SOS from one species, an SOS against another. Miles below, in coastal Buenos Aires and desert Megastes in Sahara, families awoke to emergency broadcasts. Schools canceled, work halted. Humanity held its collective breath, united by a beacon from the depths of space. Dr. Morgan, standing once more before the holoscreen on Helios I, whispered to the silent stars, "We will answer you, Vesper. But know this, if your warriors threaten Earth, we will defend our home." In the black beyond Mars, the arrays pulsed again, waiting for Earth's reply. And somewhere on Jurkath, under violet skies, the Vesper watched hope and dread. In equal measure, as their lifelines stretched across the void toward a world unprepared for what it would find. The bulk of humanity's fleet assembled silently in the shadow of Phobos, biding time as Aquila and its escort vessels awaited the Vesper Ark ship's arrival. On deck of the flagship, Lieutenant Mara Kingsley stood at parade rest, her palms pressed against the cool alloy of her rifle stock. Behind her, 3 cryogenic containment bays, each the size of a small cargo container, hummed with frosted vapor. Inside lay the Deathworlders, 7-foot behemoths, engineered by the Vesper to survive Jurkath's as lethal seas and sulfur storms. Mara swallowed. She'd trained for every imaginable battlefield, but she had not prepared for this. Their orders were clear. Receive the Vesper refugees. Study them, and if the Deathworlders showed signs of aggression, eliminate the threat. The stakes were staggering. Protect Earth, but don't destroy the very refugees begging for salvation. The first contact, moments before the Ark ships dropped out of warp. Admiral Takahashi gathered his senior officers in the Agilus command circle. Holographic schematics of the Kaltara, the largest refugee vessel, floated between them. "We have one window," Takahashi said, voice rasping with the weight of command. "We open the docking clamps, allow the Vesper to disembark, and we must guarantee no Deathworlder leaves stasis alive." Understood? The officers nodded. Dr. Elaine Morgan, her expression grim, set a datapad on the console. The Vesparian life signs show a 70% drop in refugees over the past standard day. They're desperate, more so than we feared. Her fingers flew across the display, highlighting clusters of biological signatures. They're pleading for asylum. But I've also isolated far neural imprints in the Deathworlder stasis fields. Evidence they've been tampered with, perhaps awakened remotely. Takahashi's eyes narrowed. "We proceed with caution. Mara, you lead the boarding party. Dr. Morgan, you secure the refugees' records. All others, reset the defense grids on standby." Dismissed. Into the belly of the Arkmara's squad of 20 moved like shadows down the docking corridor as the locked doors slid open with a hiss. The Kaltara's interior was a labyrinth of bioluminescent vines and organic scaffolding grown from the Vesper's bioengineering to purify the ship's air. Refugees, translucent-skinned and skeletal, clustered in wide-eyed groups, clutching crystalline spheres that glowed like captured moonlight. High Counselor Ear awaited them in the central atrium, flanked by 2 silent guards. His voice, though soft, resonated through the universal translator. "Lieutenant Kingsley, Dr. Morgan, welcome. We are grateful." Mara offered a curt nod. "High Counselor, let's make this quick. We need to secure a block of corridors to transport your people safely." Ear inclined his head. "Of course. But there is an issue." His slender hand trembled as it gestured toward a side passage. The Deathworlders, his translator broke into static. Then, more urgent, they have awakened. Chaos unleashed, the lights in the atrium flickered. An unearthly shriek rattled the organic walls. Mara shouted, "Positions!" Marines dove for cover as the first Deathworlder burst through a stasis bay door. Its mandibles snapped, bones like steel rods protruding through mottled chitin. Grill-fired plasma rifles roared to life. Bright streaks seared through the violet-tinged mist, chipping great chunks from its armored carapace. Yet the creature advanced, shrugging off impacts with inhuman tenacity. It swiped a Marine aside, sending him crashing into the living walls. He lay still. Mara charged forward, firing controlled bursts at the creature's sensory nodes. Sparks erupted, and it recoiled just enough. "Medic!" she yelled, dropping to retrieve her fallen comrade. Dr. Morgan knelt beside her, scanning the Marine's injuries and calling urgent orders into her comm. Somewhere ahead, the second Deathworlder emerged, darker and larger, its arms ending in festooned blades of crystalline bone. It moved with uncanny intelligence, positioning itself between the humans and the fleeing Vesper refugees. A tremor of dread ran through the squad. Unlikely allies they are. Morgan jabbed at her neural interface. "They're targeting the refugees," she shouted. "Priority, protect the civilians." Marines reoriented, covering every exit as screaming Vesper families spilled into the main corridor. Mara advanced on the second Deathworlder, shouting through gritted teeth, "Hold your fire until we clear the civilians." The creature paused, sensing new targets. A brave Vesper infant stumbled in its path. Without thinking, Mara dove between them, rifle butt smashing into the creature's shin joint. It snarled in pain, rearing up, and in that instant, a stray plasma bolt from a Marine's rifle struck its wrist, shattering bone. The creature reeled, and the corridor erupted in crossfire. Marines and refugees pressed forward together, a strange phalanx of species united by shared terror. When the second Deathworlder finally fell, thigh-deep in stasis cables, cheers and sobs mingled in the bioscaffolded halls. Aftermath and revelation hours. Later, back aboard the Aquila, Mara surveyed the makeshift casualty ward. 6 Marines wounded. 12 Vesper refugees badly traumatized. 2 Deathworlders contained. Dr. Morgan approached, datapad in hand. Preliminary scans show both creatures survived the journey only in stasis. The heat signature for activation matches the station's life support grid. Someone or something triggered them deliberately. She tapped a glyph on the pad. They're hunting patterns, following refugee clusters. They've learned to kill. Mara leaned against the bulkhead, exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. Then this was no accident. The Vesper tried to quarantine them. Someone sabotaged the stasis failsafes. Dr. Morgan's eyes met hers. Which means we have a saboteur on board. And if they can awaken Deathworlders remotely, Earth is in greater danger than we thought. The lieutenant's gaze drifted to the star-flecked void outside the viewport. Somewhere in the labyrinthine decks of Kaltara, the traitor moved among the refugees, plotting the next strike. And on Jurkath, the real Deathworlders, thousands strong, awaited the signal to descend upon Earth. Mara's fingers curled around her rifle. "Then we stop them here," she vowed, "before they even reach our cities." In the silent hum of the flagship's engines, the air crackled with resolve. The battle for Earth had truly begun. 5 days after the first Deathworlder outbreak aboard the Aquila, Earth braced itself in grim anticipation. Orbital defense platforms swarmed with interceptor drones, and planetary shield generators hummed beneath their domes. Coastal megacities dimmed their lights to avoid attracting attention and potential attacks from the unknown predators. The descent of the refugee fleets on July 2, 2125. At 14:03 GMT, long-range sensors detected a flotilla of 30 Vesper Ark ships emerging from hyperspace ships that had transmitted dire pleas for asylum. Each vessel carried thousands of refugees, children with translucent skin, elders whose hollow cheeks bore the weight of a dying world, and scientists clutching salvage data for Zircath-S restoration. Admiral Takahashi faced a stark choice: deny the refugees entry and risk condemning an entire species, or admit them and risk a second wave of Deathworlder sabotage. At the briefing, Dr. Morgan presented her findings. We've localized the saboteur's neural signature to one of the smaller transports, she reported. He's using the Vesper emergency beacons to trigger the remaining Deathworlders in cryo across the fleet. The Admiral's steel gaze hardened. Then we board. Lieutenant Kingsley, you'll lead Spearhead Unit onto each ship, isolate the saboteur, and neutralize Deathworlders before they can fully awaken. Spearheads drop, and the hidden threat Mara Kingsley's dropship sliced through the atmosphere toward the lead Ark ship, Alvarez. At her side, 10 of her best Marines checked their exosuits and weapons. Below them, the burning orange horizon of Earth beckoned the planet on the knife's edge between compassion and catastrophe. The airlock door exploded inward with a thunderous crash as they landed. The interior of Alvarez was eerily silent, corridors bathed in dim emergency red lighting. No refugees were in sight, only the distant echo of dripping coolant and the faint hum of stasis generators. Keep your eyes open, Mara whispered into her comms. We're looking for anomalies, unregistered neural activity, biolocking overrides. In the engineering bay, they found it, the saboteur. A lone Vesper engineer, gaunt and wide-eyed, crouched over a console, hands dancing across controls. Dozens of Deathworlder stasis pods lined the walls, their locks flickering in and out of CRYO-ceiling. Lieutenant Kingsley stepped forward. Hands where I can see them. He froze, terror etched into every vertebral ridge. I am saving my people, he rasped. They deserve release. By unleashing monsters? Mara's voice was steel. Nobody else dies on my watch. At her command, Marines detained the saboteur and sealed off the chamber. Sirens blared as the stasis pods came back online, but one by one they ominously unlocked. Aboard the Storm, the first Deathworlder clambered from its pod. Greater than any they had seen before, broad shoulders draped in plates of bone, limbs ending in serrated claws. It snarled, sensing fresh blood. Mara's team opened fire, blasts of plasma carving chunks from its flanks. Yet with every strike, it adapted its reflexes, sharpening, its armor growing denser where it had been struck. Behind her, a Marine screamed as the creature's tail whipped around, ensnaring him and hurling him into the bulkhead. He slumped to the deck, motionless. Fall back to the airlock, Mara ordered, but the corridor collapsed in on them. The Alvarez shuddered as another Deathworlder emerged from the darkness, this one larger, more vicious. As the two creatures closed in, menaced on both flanks, Mara realized the only way out was through. She keyed her comm. Aquila, prep the targeting lasers on that base standby to roast these things. Moments later, from the heavens above, twin lances of focused energy flared through the deck plating. The first Deathworlder erupted in a storm of ash and burning chitin. The second roared its defiance, but faltered, its crystal bones splintering under the sustained beam. The deck buckled under the heat, but Mara and her survivors sprinted for the evac ramp. As they spilled onto the tarmac, the Alvarez keeled over, its hull rupturing in a ball of plasma fire that lit the sky above Earth's blue curve. Victory and vigilance by nightfall. All 30 Ark ships had been boarded. 14 Deathworlders were neutralized. 10 saboteurs detained. Refugees were escorted to quarantine habitats on the Moon and in the Sahara's underwater domes. On the deck of the Aquila, Admiral Takahashi and Dr. Morgan debriefed Mara. "You saved millions of lives today," the Admiral said, voice uncharacteristically soft. Mara shook her head. "No, Admiral, our fleet saved itself, and we stopped a war before it began." Dr. Morgan held out a hollow tablet showing the Vesper scientist. "Detained on Alvarez. We've begun negotiations for cooperation," she said. "They'll share their bioengineering data. We'll help them be beyond with Johan's oceans. In return, they'll help us design defenses against future threats." High Counselor Ear appeared on screen, his skeletal frame backlit by the muted glow of refugee camps. "Your mercy is our honor," he said. "May the alliance we forged today echo through the stars." Dawn of a new alliance. When the last Ark ship settled in its new orbit, Earth's shield generators dimmed their glow. Humanity had peered into the abyss and survived. In the weeks that followed, engineers and xenobiologists worked side by side with the Vesper to craft cleansing manids destined for Jurkath seas. Training grounds on Mars bore simulators that combined human tactics with Vesper bioadaptation research. On Earth, towering memorials were erected in the ruins of evacuated Megacities, monuments to courage, sacrifice, and the fragile hope born from fear. Mara Kingsley returned to the Aquila, placing a hand on the crystalline orb gifted by Air, now safely housed in the flagship's arboretum. It pulsed with gentle light, a reminder that even worlds born in death can foster life renewed. As the twin suns of Jurkath set on holographic displays across the fleet, Lieutenant Kingsley stood watch at the viewport. The line between monster and martyr had been drawn in blood and plasma, but through unity, both humanity and the Vesper had forged a new destiny. In the silent expanse beyond, other signals waited to be answered, and Earth would be ready